afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and this is Marina Bojalenko reporting for BioBusiness TV, Biotech in the Money. And today we have our special guest, who's Mark Schoenebaum, who we've all known for quite some time, and he is now head of pharmaceutical and biotechnology research at the ISI Group. And prior to that, he had quite a long career on Wall Street and has been #1 II biotechnology analyst for the past 5 years. So, Mark, thank you for coming. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Marina. You made me sound very old.
Well, all of us have to get old. But anyway, let's just talk about some of the bigger events that's been happening in the past month or so. So let's talk about Genzyme for a second. So question number one, from a valuation perspective, do you think that Sanofi's original bid was not as appropriate as some of the investor community thinks? I mean, or is it just sort of posturing from the investor community hoping that Sanofi will bring up the bid as they usually would do?
Well, I think anybody trying to buy anything where there's no price tag sitting on it is going to underbid. So I'm operating under the assumption that the $69 initial bid that Sanofi made for Genzyme is clearly a lowball bid. And I think Sanofi even has said as much in public meetings. So that they did a lunch, for example, for investors a couple weeks ago that I attended. And even at that meeting, the CEO, Mr. Wiebacher, stood up there and said, look, we're not going to be, quote, hard-headed on price. So I think they've even sent a message that that number is going to go up. I think the real controversy right now amongst investors is exactly how high is it going to go up. And there are certain investors that are activists that own Genzyme shares that have actually put out information in the public domain, slide decks in the public domain, which value the company at something like 80, somewhere between the low 80s and the low 90s on a takeout perspective. So there's kind of the spread. We have a $69 initial offer, we have 80s to 90s where some of the shareholders want to see it go. In my opinion, the vast majority of Genzyme shareholders would probably take something between 75 and 80, and that would probably be the clearing price. I think the minimum clearing price to get this deal done, 75 to 80. So the real question becomes, will Sanofi pay that? Right. And that's harder to tell. In the modeling that I've done, the sum of the parts modeling I've done, the kind of models that we do for M&A, 75 to 80 is very reasonable price to pay. I think everybody makes money in that case. In other words, Sanofi writes a big check, but it's going to be an NPV positive investment for them. At 75 to $80, that's going to return. It's going to probably generate a nice return for them. And I think Genzyme shareholders ultimately would be happy about it. Something over 80 they'd be ecstatic about, but something 75 to 80 I think probably gets it done.
And so how come we haven't seen a white knight in this particular situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, for me, I think it was a surprise to me, and I think it's a surprise to most people, that Sanofi suddenly woke up one day and wanted to be in orphan diseases. So Genzyme had never really been at the top of the takeout candidate list because they did this orphan disease thing. It was a very unique business with very high prices, very small patient populations, and up until the last couple months, most pharma companies actually said that's not something that we're sure we want to get involved with. So I think most of the world was surprised when Sanofi woke up one morning and said, we'd like to do orphan diseases. And so I'd actually be surprised if another company wakes up one morning and says, you know what, we'd like to do orphan too. So in my mind, it's unlikely that we're going to see a white knight. In my opinion, Sanofi probably is the only bidder out there, and I don't know anything. There could be others that suddenly wake up and say, wait a minute, we're missing something. We want to do orphan diseases. But orphan diseases historically has not been an area where pharma has said, that's a place we want to be. Right. They've said things like, we want to be in biologics, we want to be in cancer, we want to be in inflammation, but I can't remember hearing a large pharma say, I want to be in orphans. So I'd be surprised if two wake up one morning and say that. Yeah.
And then in terms of Carl Icahn and some of the other shareholder activists, have they been helpful in this process or harmful in this process?
Depends which process you're talking about. If you're talking about the process of the actual the dynamics that's going on with Sanofi right now, I think that they have not been harmful, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but they certainly haven't been harmful from what it sounds like. There have been no public declarations from Carl Icahn's team. There have been no public declarations from the team at Relational Investors. So it doesn't appear publicly, at least, as if they've been harmful. To some extent, I think they've been helpful, I would say, because I think Genzyme today, fundamentally, regardless of the Sanofi deal, fundamentally Genzyme is in a better place today than it was a year ago, and I think some of that credit clearly goes to the involvement of the activists, and the board has changed, the way the management structure, the way the management is structured has changed, and some of that credit goes to the activists. So in my mind, net-net, it's actually been a positive influence on Genzyme.
Okay.